Howdy, folks, and welcome to another episode of Godstar Talks, YouTube's 8 millionth most popular series featuring a balding, malding man, discussing gaming's hot topics served cold. In this episode, the newest hit MMO from 2019, now finally in the West, Lost Ark. Let's dive right into this gazpacho that Smilegate and Amazon Game Studios have squeezed from the tomato anus of an ARPG and garnished with mobile phone game grease. For a TLDR, I think that the game is designed so much like a mobile game that it's pulling a reverse Diablo Immortal. Instead of selling you a computer game that you need a phone for, it's selling you on a mobile game experience that you need a computer for. But hey, at least the combat's incredibly fun, and there's still a good ARPG in there somewhere. I also have a lot of speculation about how the mobile game cash shop and game design of Lost Ark will be used in the West fantastically to cash out and bro down. Again, this is from my first impressions with the title as a free-to-play user. I have about 12 hours played on Deadeye, and I also have timestamps below of the topics that I have for you today if you want to skip around. Finally, this is the mandatory YouTube engagement bit, so comment down below which Lost Ark class you would want dropping you off on your first day of high school. Now, let's chill out in this totally cool place and enjoy the best second monitor content in town. This game is like a really good fast food meal. Try to enjoy it for the least amount of time you have to spend on it, and don't look too long at your food between bites. The game and the food are going to leave you momentarily satisfied, but there's a good chance you're going to have some indigestion later on. I have been playing as a free user. I waited until the free launch on Friday, and I won't be spending any real money on the game to see how the experience compares to others that you can see all over YouTube that are going to be spending money on their experience. So far, it's felt fine, and that's been refreshing. The game feels great to play combat-wise, and there's a lot of depth to my current class that keeps me wanting more. Lots of stuff feels wonky, though, like the quest length and how long you spend in zones. Some quests feel satisfying, and others feel like supreme time wasters. This is where the funk of mobile game design wafts in. More on that later, though. The use of mounts in open-world areas is messing with my gamer brain that just wants to crush everything around me all the time, but now the game is giving me incentive to just skip over enemies. Finally, the vast quantity of currencies, collectibles, and menus can easily overwhelm new players or cause them to just ignore core features to avoid burnout, myself included. The barrage of menus and vast amount of systems for you to immediately interact with is either going to cause unnecessary friction for people, or it's going to require a learning curve. Lastly, I can't comment on the success of the westernization effort yet, but it seems that Western players might be an easier sell for direct boosts like gear and consumables than the producers might have seen from their surveys and research. Onto my experience on the free user launch day. I didn't have any queues when I tried to play in the evening in the Western US, but I did have issues with server lag constantly for the first few hours. At times, it was nearly unplayable. My friend with much better internet had less issues, but still had huge lag spikes, and the city hub was full of rubber banding. My second and third days had small spikes, but I didn't have any problems that affected my gameplay past small annoyances. As far as playing for free versus buying the Founders Pack goes, these packs and their benefits don't feel like something you immediately need, which is refreshing, but I can imagine the fear of missing out hitting a lot of people with slower progression or with less customization early on. After my first weekend of playing, I can still barely begin to tell you how useful the crystalline aura is now versus endgame, because I just don't fully understand what the hell is going on with half of these systems. The game feels fantastic to press buttons and figure out combos for some classes, and the visual and audio effects for the Deadeye skills make the onslaught feel satisfyingly visceral. These simple traits may seem trivial, but if you're going to see and hear them for potentially hundreds of hours, they need to be S tier. I really enjoyed the gunner classes, and I've chosen to stick with Deadeye, but I plan on giving the other classes more playtime eventually. The talent trees attached to each skill felt like a great way to give characters different tool sets, and I also love that trial and error is encouraged with the ability to swap talent points easily and save multiple presets. Right now, they all feel pretty pointless since the combat hasn't become difficult, but the potential for a system like this in late-game content seems like a great way to allow players to create duties and roles without being limited to just their class choices. In theory, every combination of players could succeed in combat, and maybe something like this could spark imagination in other games that use the traditional holy trinity of tank, healer, and DPS. Imagine a game where the strategy of team building comes down to figuring out how everyone can use their utility to conquer obstacles in different ways. You could have so much more complexity in your fights knowing that everybody at least has a basic tool set to work with. So we can start making innovations on how they use those tools rather than can you line up the hammer with the nail. But that's wishful thinking. For now, let's stick to the pragmatic and dive into the meat of the content. The story and the gameplay. The stuff that's there to make you want to play. While I had nothing but positivity for the game feel, the redeeming factors for the game's story and world building are sparse at best. The story is serviceable and the cutscenes are like plot in a porno. And so far, the only engagement I've had for the characters or the setting has been during open world exploration. Everything is adequate, but don't expect to be engaged or won over by anything these characters or exposition have to offer. The quest structures can be really bizarre at times. Like they're trying to fill a checklist for quests that are at MMOs or ARPGs. You have bare-ass collection quests, talk to A, then go talk to B quests, talk to someone and move some stuff, etc. But you're never doing any quest long enough to really even notice the difference in gameplay between them. You need to collect something? Okay, go kill 2 things and maybe click on an object. Need to destroy this camp of raiders? Just click on one tent to destroy it. That'll be good enough for the whole camp. The dissonance starts to feel extreme when you have a quest that asks you to move stone bricks to rebuild a wall segment, only to have you pick up 1 stone and move it 20 paces. You don't even place it on the wall. You just drop it on the floor near it, and that's apparently good enough for you to get a reward and a thumbs up from the game. When the necessary engagement for completion is so incredibly low like this, you never engage the player on your gameplay. You only engage them on your reward structures. This to me seems like an intentional way to encourage players to do whatever they can to progress faster. The game has great gameplay loops and its core ARPG elements of kill, loot, power up, but everything else feels structured to cause friction with the players between those gameplay moments instead of treating them like the pacing and engagement tools they should be. I want to explore this more in depth in another video, so stay tuned. It'll be ready when it's ready. To add a ray of light in all of this darkness, I really enjoyed the small interactions I've had with the rapport system. This system lets you go through small storylines that feel strangely intimate compared to the rest of the game so far. This system reminds me of Fable, where you have to do emotes, play instruments, and give gifts to people to progress a storyline and fill up a bar to unlock benefits. I would have loved to see this system in other games that have a stronger story and world to work with. For a direct example, World of Warcraft's newest expansion, Shadowlands, featured 4 covenants that you choose from, with a back-of-the-box feature of those 4 covenants being characters in each one that you soulbind with to find deeper power. If you had the rapport system with each of these soulbinds, they might have made an impact with the players and wouldn't feel so ultimately pointless and forgettable as characters like they turned out to be. Here's to hoping game developers can learn from each other in a healthy way again, instead of everyone copying each other's money printing engagement systems. The game overall has fantastic sound and art design, but many of the small details start to crack this perfect veneer. I had a lot of visual fidelity bugs and glitches that constantly disrupted me. There were texture pops and textures that wouldn't load, the triport stones being the worst culprit for me. These issues are not impacting my direct gameplay, but definitely are issues you can't help but notice. This last detail is subjective and is my own opinion, but the VO work for the localization has some wild variety and quality. Some lines sound well recorded and directed, and others feel like late 90s or early 2000s games, where they had people around the office just recording without any direction. My favorite line so far has been a villager proclaiming, "It's over!" This can feel hokey and fun at times, or feel obnoxious and intrusive when there are multiple VO lines overlapping with different qualities. This was really apparent when you were running around in the main city hub area, or in certain cutscenes where they would have multiple enemies trying to talk over each other. The in-engine cutscenes, though, let's go to those. The in-engine cutscenes feel effortless and like another thing that's just there to meet a checklist. But surprisingly, the game has some awesome animation that you can see really well when you watch character emotes. I'm starting to dread watching these dialogue interactions full of chat boxes with only one sentence of dialogue having VO done, as much as I dread unskippable cutscenes before a boss fight. This nitpick is more of a Western concern that I wish was addressed, but the gender locking of classes currently feels terrible. The game doesn't make each of these classes as unique characters and instead lets you design your own. So the arbitrary locking of genders feels like a terrible decision or something based on having to create less assets for a separate model, kind of like Ubisoft argued with adding a female player character to Assassin's Creed Unity. This whole debacle feels like a problem from a decade ago and has already made me much less invested in the customization of my character. I didn't even feel the need to make any of the small changes available in customization, just hit a few random presets and went about my business. I hope that they choose to expand customization eventually in the future, but I think that's going to be reserved for the store. The game has enough to keep me wanting to play from moment to moment, but every time I think about my experience as a whole, all I can think of is how good the combat is and how underwhelming the bits between it are. It's like biting into a Twinkie with no cream filling. It's not terrible. Man, you just can't shake the disappointment of how much better it could have been if it was properly filled. I fully expect that hitting endgame is the goal, so I will reserve final judgments until I see more of the game. Check back for Season 2 of Maulding on Lost Ark in 2023, maybe delayed to 2024 if my writers keep trying to unionize. I hope they work hard at improving and changing the game, and don't just accept it as a cash out, because the game overall has a lot of potential. If the game ends up reflecting those mobile tactics I'm sniffing out and continues to lack complexity in everything but combat and engagement systems, then it will be a fun romp until I hit the breaking point and move on. I hope you enjoyed this video, whoever you are that's still watching. Blink 3 times if you need someone to call for help. I don't know who's going to make the call, or who they can even call to help you, you silly goose. But maybe you both can help me grow this channel. The success of a job well done is just a like and subscribe away. So close you can taste it. I bet it tastes better than Lost Ark gazpacho. Take care, folks, and as always, stay groovy.